Okay, so let's look at chapter 6, and this is the nature of management. And as you get ready to go into a business environment, you are not going to be top dog to start with. So we'll be covering the different levels of management where you would probably start at the lower level and move up. So let's talk about what management is. Management is the process that's designed to achieve the organization's objectives by using what resources they have effectively and efficiently in a changing environment. Now, there's a difference between effectively and efficiently. Effectively means you have an intended result. Efficiently means accomplishing the objectives with minimum resources. Both are important in the management area. Managers are those individuals within your organization who make decisions about the use of resources and who are concerned with the things that managers do well: planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling the organization's activities in order to reach their objectives. Now, resources. Resources relate to more than just one area. It's employees, suppliers, and financial resources. Employees are hired through staffing, and staffing, of course, is the hiring of people to carry out the work of the organization. So we may need to recruit, train, compensate, and provide benefits to those employees to foster loyalty to your organization. Well, sometimes we may need to downsize, and downsizing is the elimination of a significant number of employees from an organization to make it more cost effective. Then you have suppliers, and your suppliers ensure that the products that you need are made available to customers. And in a global market, firms enlist hundreds of different and diverse suppliers. And then, of course, it is necessary to have financial resources. You have to pay for those essential activities. And again, it goes back to those stakeholders: owners, shareholders, bank, and other financial institutions that are going to help you meet the goals that you need for your financial resources. Now, this slide shows the functions of management. There's four major functions: planning, organizing, directing, and controlling. And we're going to look at each one of those in a little more in depth. But planning is whatever activities you need to achieve the goals of the organization. Organizing is bringing all those resources and activities to achieve the organization's objectives. Directing is the employees' activities toward the objectives. And then controlling is the organization's activities to keep it on course. So you notice there's kind of a theme: objectives, 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 and then finally those objectives keep it on course. So let's look at the management functions, and we're going to start with planning. And planning for a manager is laying the groundwork for the other functions, the organization's objections, and deciding how, as a manager of a team, that you're going to accomplish them. And you will always look at your mission and a mission or a mission statement. And many organizations have mission statements for the organizations, and then they also have mission statements for each department. And it should include who we are, who are our customers, what is our operating philosophy, such as our beliefs, our values, our business ethics, and then what are the core competencies and competitive advantages that we're striving for? The next function of management is strategic plans. And a strategic plans are those long range objectives and that overall strategy, or whatever is considered a course of action by which that firm is going to fulfill its mission. Now, what a strategic plan does, and companies you generally will do this every year. They will start with a strategic plan, and then at the end of the year they go back and they evaluate how they've done, and what they need to add or take away. So strategic plans establish the objectives and how they're going to fulfill that mission. Generally, it covers from 1 year or even longer. Most of them have a 1 year, a 5 year, and a 10-year strategic plan. And you can add products, you can purchase companies, sell unprofitable segments of the business, issue stocks, and even move into international markets. So that might be some 1 year, and it could also be 5 year objectives of a mission strategic plan. So, management functions in terms of the planning, first of all, are the goals, and they're going to be expressed in general terms. You're not going to be very specific, but generally overall, what are our quantifiable metrics where we can see where the firm is now and where we want it to be. Objectives are going to be your measurable benchmarks that are going to be derived from the organization's missions and goals. And then you have, after the objectives, come the KPIs, or what is considered key performance indicators. That is specific and quantitative metrics that are used to measure, track, and analyze our progress toward those objectives. Another element of planning is crisis management, or sometimes it's called contingency planning. And what it does, it deals with potential disasters such as product tampering, oil spills, earthquakes, different things like that. Many businesses do not have updated plan, and a lot of times 40% of small businesses won't reopen after a disaster. Now, I'm going to date myself here because I'm going to go back to 9/11. And you think about all the financial businesses that were in the Twin Towers. Some of them had crisis management plans, some did not. The one with crisis management plans generally had a way of reopening because they had access to their files. So what I had read was that a lot of them had backups of any of their financial data for customers and themselves stored off just as a contingency plan. So if something happened, those are the ones that survived. The ones that did not have anything that was not within their office didn't make it because they could not get a hold of their plans or their files. Another element of planning is crisis management, or it is sometimes referred to as contingency planning, and that deals with potential disasters such as product tampering, oil spills, fires, earthquake, computer viruses, pandemics, and even a reputation crisis due to an unethical or illegal conduct by one or more of your employees. Some disasters cannot be anticipated, so that's when you have to have that crisis management in effect, so that everybody knows, okay, what do I need to do because something has happened. And this is just an example of crisis management, where there was a supply demand for KFC in the United Kingdom. So they had decided they were going to cut back expenses. And what happened was that part of their outlets didn't have chicken for several days. And so they had to have a contingency plan. So they did a public service where they did a print campaign of apologizing for their mistake. So let's look at some other management functions, and now we're going to go into organizing. We just got through with planning, so now we're going to go into organizing, and that is going to be the structuring of those resources and activities that you need to accomplish the objectives of your company in an effective and efficient manner. Managers organize by reviewing plans, and then you're going to determine what activities are necessary to implement them. Then you're going to break that work into smaller units, and you're going to assign it to specific individuals, groups, or even a department. And then you will have a business model. And that business model relates to how a firm creates, delivers, and is organized to operate and provide value to your stakeholders. All right, so continuing with management functions, we've had organization. Now we're going to go to directing and controlling. So as a manager, as a part of the management functions, you have to motivate and lead your employees. And now remember, I told you in a couple of slides ago that managers and leaders didn't always have the same person. Sometimes managers are great leaders, sometimes they are not. And that is your goal, is to become a great leader. You have to tell employees what to do, when to do it, you got to set deadlines and encourage them to do their work. Then you're responsible for administering awards and recognition, and you need to provide incentives so that they meet those goals of the organization. And then you want to always encourage your workers to contribute ideas. You'd be amazed at how these workers that your frontline workers, they see these things every day, will have some great ideas how to reduce cost, how to improve customer service, which is at an awful low at right now, and even coming up with some new products. Then you have controlling. And that's evaluating and correcting activities. Probably one of the most difficult things you're going to have to do is because you have to evaluate, and then you have to sit down and talk to your employees about what they're doing good and what they're doing bad. So it's measuring performance, comparing performances, it's identifying deviations, it's investigating the cause of those deviations, and then it's taking corrective action when it's necessary. Now the next two slides are just some visuals of the different types of managers, levels of management, and now we're going into planning. So you really remember, I've always said it starts at the top and it works its way down. So when we talk about top management, we're talking about your presidents, your CEO, executive vice presidents, your middle managers, and this is probably where you, with a college degree, are going to fall in. Now, unless your parents own the company, you're not going to be a top management to start with. But you're going to be plant managers, division managers, department managers, and then below them you have foremen, supervisors, and office managers, where you could start and work your way up. The next slide shows the importance of management functions at each level. So remember, here's our 4 areas that we're talking about, the functions: planning, organizing, directing, and controlling. So you see, as top manager, it's planning and organizing. Middle manager, planning and organizing. But look what you get when you get down here to the bottom level, what we call first line managers: controlling and directing. That goes back into the motivation and watching what your companies do. So now let's kind of go through what are the duties that these managers do. You have the top managers, and again, that's your president, your executives, your chief financial officers, different things like that. And they have the overall responsibility for an organization. If it's a publicly owned corporation, the CEO's boss is the board of directors. Now remember, to be publicly owned, they have to share stocks. And they spend most of their time planning and making those strategic plans for 1, 5, and 10 years. And compensation committees work with the directors and CEOs to keep pay in line with the performance, so that getting paid as a CEO doesn't get way out of whack. And then workforce diversity is good workers for both bottom line workers. Then we have that middle management, and they're responsible for tactical planning. They have more focused responsibilities in time organizers. They're plant managers, division managers, department managers, and this is the area that they're cutting a lot in big corporations where they're downsizing. It's that middle line. Now, first line management is where most people get their experience, and that's where you're going to supervise both workers and the daily operations of the organization. You implement plans established by that middle management, but you are responsible for directing your workers' daily performance. Again, you spend most of your time directing and controlling, versus the others, which is organization. And that includes foremen, supervisors, office service managers. Okay, the next area we're going to be looking at is some types of management. We've kind of described the different managers, but now we're going to look at the different types. So you might have, in business, you might have finance, you might have production and operations, human resources, marketing, IT, and administration. So a financial manager is one that's going to be responsible for obtaining that money to make the operation successful and using it in accordance with the organizational goals. A production manager and operation manager, basically the same thing, develop and administer the activities involved in transforming resources into goods and services. And we're going to be looking at each one of these in following chapters. And then we have HR. They are responsible for handling staffing, and they deal with all the legal problems that may be encountered within for employees. We have a marketing manager. They are going to be looking at the planning, pricing, and promoting products, and they are making the products available to customers. Your IT manager is responsible for implementing, maintaining, and controlling the technology. And then an administrative manager is going to manage the entire business or just a major segment. So it'd be like at Reinhardt. You have your deans, and each dean would be responsible for their school. So you might have an administrative manager that's responsible for their department, and they don't specialize in a particular function. Here are some skills that are needed by managers. Technical expertise. Sometimes you have to have specialized knowledge and training. You have to be able to train the employees, answer questions, provide guidance, and solve problems. And these technical expertise, now keep this in your mind, this is needed most by your front line manager and least critical by those top levels. The CEO doesn't need to know how to operate a printing machine. Then they have to have conceptual skills. You have to be able to think abstractly. Someone is not going to sit by you and say, okay, now here is what, as the manager, here is what you have to do. They expect you to know how to do that. That is needed most by top level managers. And they're looking at, where is the company going to be in 5 years? So to do that, they have to be able to think creatively. You have analytical skills, and these are being able to identify relevant issues to the company. And again, that's needed by top level managers because they have to resolve ethical issues that often require those analytical skills. And I think this is next one is necessary by every manager and every employee. Human relations skills. You have to have the ability to deal with people, and the more successful that you're going to be if you can relate well to others, you can communicate well, meaning you can be understood, that you are able to project what you're trying to say without having to grasp for words. You have to be able to understand the needs for other. And very important, you have to show true appreciation for the others in your employment. And important, and this is just so important, and it just shows these hospital, airlines, banks. I think it's important in every organization. You have to have the ability to deal with people both inside your company and outside your company. So here's just a table that kind of gives us some requirements of successful leadership. And I like these 4 over here. It was just a clip art I found. Inspire people, empower people, share your vision, and lead change. So to be a successful leader, you've got to communicate your objectives and expectation. You have to gain respect and trust of your stakeholders. You have to develop shared values. You have to acquire and share knowledge. I always used to tell my class, your duty as a manager is to prepare your employees to take your job. Now, I know that sounds like, duh, what is she talking about? Remember, the only heartbeat you've ever been promised is the one you just took. Have you developed someone to be able to take your job if something happens? And that's empowering employees. It's being a role model. And again, it's sharing your knowledge with your employees, and then providing rewards, and then taking corrective actions to achieve goals. Now, as you're beginning to develop your leadership skills and styles, right, what we think about when we think about leaders, we're thinking of 3 different types. We have autocratic, and those are the leaders that say, this is how you're going to do it, and this is why you're doing it, and this is when it's going to be done. No and, if, or buts about it. A democratic leader involves employees in those decisions. A free rein leader lets employees work without much interference, and they let the employees find their own way to meet the standards and goals of the company. Now, in most businesses, an autocratic leader is going to fail, and a free rein leader is going to struggle. You want to be a democratic leader. You want to be in charge, but you want to be open-minded enough that your employees feel comfortable coming to you, talking about questions and concerns. So remember, leadership is the ability to influence those employees to work toward those organizational goals. And this is just an example of one democratic Democratic leader that's been very, very successful, and that's Jack Dorsey from Twitter. Now, authentic leaders is something that's just starting to take hold. And it is different from leadership styles because it's not exclusive. It can be both democratic and free reign leaders would qualify because they are generally passionate about the goals and mission of the company, and they make sure that they personally are displaying the corporate values in the workplace, and they form long-term relationships with stakeholders. Now let's talk about employee empowerment. And that occurs when employees are provided with the ability to take on responsibilities and make decisions about the job. So that is called precipitative decision making. It involves both the manager and the employee input, but it supports employee empowerment within the organizations. As a leader, you must adopt the system that's going to support your employees to ability to give you input and feedback on the company, and not take it personally or strike back at your employees like, okay, you said I can't do this, I'll show you. Finally, let's talk about leadership in teams. Now, leadership in teams is becoming the norm in a lot of business environment because it's an effective way to encourage employee empowerment. Remember, letting your employees make decisions. But when you make decisions and when your employees make decisions, you have to have established that the decisions may come with consequences, that they have to be responsible for those decisions. Most effective teams encourage all employees to contribute ideas and recommendations. They may encourage it, but it's not going to happen. You will have one or two that's going to want to run the show, and then you'll have two or three that just sits back and lets that employee do everything. It's common for outspoken employees to dominate teams, okay, and engage in groupthink. And groupthink is, this is the way I think, so everybody in the group has to think this way. And they kind of, I call it corporate bullying. I'm in charge, you got to do this. But one thing is, you can eliminate this if you have training employees how to listen to one another and provide relevant feedback. And our last couple of slides, we're going to talk about decision making. And this is just a flow chart that shows you we recognize the problem, we develop our options, analyze it, then we select the best option, we implement it, and then we monitor it for consequences. So let's look at decision making. Recognizing and defining the situation. A situation is not always negative. It can be positive. And small scale decisions can occur without warning. Large scale decisions generally occur after warning signs. Some of them in business are declining profits, inventory buildup, and so then somebody's got to jump in and make a decision. Once the situation is recognized, management must define it. And we have to develop options. We got to sit down and say, okay, here are 4 or 5 options. So we list them, and they have to be standard and creative. Then as a team, we're going to brainstorm to encourage creativity on which of our options we think would work. We have to analyze our options. We have to look at practical and what's the appropriateness of each option. Does the option address the situation? Then we select the best option. Now, once the option has been selected, we have to implement it. Yeah, no, it's not going to do any good just to say, okay, here's what we're going to do if we don't do anything. So it can be simple or it can be complex, but we always have to keep in our minds that we can have unexpected consequences. And so then we have to look at how are we going to monitor those consequences? What's the result? Was it a sound decision, or do we need to go back and look at other options? So let's look at management and practice. Management's not exact and calculated. There's no magical formula for managing your firm and achieving those goals. It boils down to two activities: figuring out what to do despite uncertainty, diversity, or enormous amount of potentially relevant information. It is getting those things done with people, and it's despite having little direct control. Now, an agenda. Most organizations, when you have meetings, you have an agenda. An agenda is a calendar, and it's going to contain both specific and vague items, and it's going to cover short-term, long-term goals and objectives. And what it does, it helps you determine what must be done. And there's so many agendas out there that you can use. Technology, there's no problem with that. Now, another thing that managers spend a lot of time doing is networking. And networking is building relationships and sharing that information with colleagues who are going to help you achieve those items on your agenda. A networking can give you information and advice on diverse topics. And of course, social media is so prevalent in networking. Now, and the last thing are some challenges that you're going to find in a business environment. So I know most of you are freshmen and you've got 4 years to be working on these, but as you start working and looking at classes, you have to think of, all right, how am I going to fit in the business world? Technology changes daily, so you've got to keep up with that. Ethics, corporate ethics, and social responsibility. Every time the news is on, you hear about something new that people are wanting us to do to protect the environment. Watch the impact of social media. What's the nature of the change in our workforce? There are new laws and regulation comes down every year. Increased global competition. We are not a melting pot anymore in the United States. The melting pot used to be where we thought of everybody coming together and we all just come together and we were one big happy family. It doesn't work that way. I always refer to it as a salad bowl where everybody's different and you mix it all up. This is very important. Declining educational standards. We want everybody to get that trophy, that participation trophy, and sometimes not everybody needs that participation trophy. They need to do something different. So that's going to be a challenge for you. And then making the best use of time. As a college student, sometimes a lot of you don't know how to make use of your time. You can't get your study habits together. You need to develop that now so that you can take it into the business world. So that is our chapter 6. Remember that there is a difference between a manager and a leader. You want to be both. You want to be the best manager you can be and an outstanding leader. Thank you.